Yeah, thanks very much, Greg. First up, I'd just like to highlight, I guess, some of the key features of the Learning on Country program. First of all, it's very much a grassroots local initiative. It's not a program that's actually been given to the territory or the communities by a government or a government department. It's very much a bottom-up creation from the local community level, because it's been conceived, it's been designed and it's been implemented by Yolngu, Bining and Andiliakwa people for teaching Indigenous students within their own community and on their own country and sea estate. So one of the key things is that it's characterised by... Have we lost the sound?
No.
Good.
These right in front of you, just right there. Thank you, sir.
Great.
My apologies.
That's all right. One of the central characteristics is the establishing of key relationships and partnerships within the community. So the development of the program has actually seen genuine collaboration between schools, Indigenous ranger groups, government agencies, community and private business. It's a pilot program, essentially. As we speak at the moment, there are 5 sites in northeast Arnhem Land, which I'll point out in a minute. And we're sort of, being a pilot program, they're sort of charting the way with this new approach and method to teaching Indigenous students. The Learning on Country method and approach is showing great promise, I might say, and has strong support amongst the Indigenous communities within which it is implemented. And it's very much governed by a central group of principles which were developed at the outset of the program by experienced teachers in Arnhem Land. So one of the core principles is the concept of both ways education. So we're talking here, and it'll be elaborated later on, talking about 2 knowledge systems, the Indigenous knowledge system and the Australian mainstream or Western knowledge system. And we're really talking about recognising and utilising both of these knowledge systems and valuing both. And it actually works quite well in the education context. So here we have a map of northeast Arnhem Land, and you can see that the 5 sites. So on the left we have Maningrida, where we have a partnership between the Jelk Rangers and the Maningrida College. And heading east at Gullywinku, we've got the Martha Cole Rangers working together with Shepparton College. At Yirrkala, we've got the Yirrkala Homeland School working with the Yirrkala Rangers. And also we've got the Yirrkala Community School working with the Dimaroo Rangers. And it is located here. A more recent entry into the program has been at Groot Island, where we have a number of schools there. There's Anurugu, Aliangula, Umbakamba and Miliakbara, which forms a hub there, and they are involved in Learning on Country as well. So, if you were at a school on a typical Learning on Country day, what would you actually see? You might, if you were standing in the grounds, you might see some Indigenous students file out of a classroom with their teacher. There may well be a ranger with them and possibly a Learning on Country coordinator. Hop into a troopie and head off down the road into a bush setting somewhere, perhaps beside a creek or river, and they may well be joined by a senior Indigenous person who has expert knowledge in the traditional culture and has authority to speak for that particular land that the students are actually on at that time and are going to be conducting their activities. So they might look at, if they're studying, for example, focusing on crocodiles as a focus for their inquiry. They might look at where they live in that creek, what sort of bushland it usually surrounds that area, what do crocodiles eat, what might be the significance as a totem figure in traditional culture, traditional stories and clan connections, kinship ties. So that's all, those activities are conducted in the bush, on country, and then after lunch they will be back at school, and this is where it doesn't stop there, because the second part of the education process happens in the classroom. So they might be led by the teacher this time, using that experience in the bush to look at scientific concepts of perhaps habitat, ecological sustainability, data recording, mapping, numeracy, written reports, scientific reports, creative story writing. So also perhaps the commercial skin trade. So there's lots of different avenues of inquiry that you can use to, which is their experience in the bush has been a springboard for that development of that curriculum in the school. So what we're doing is, what the program does, it's connecting ranges with Indigenous students so that the Indigenous students learn about Western concepts and methods of scientific inquiry, numeracy, literacy and social science within the context of their own country. And at the very same time, they're learning about themselves, their identity, their place in their culture, with perhaps the outcomes of becoming strong, settled individuals, interacting with the world from a position of security and strength, being able to embrace opportunities as they come along, and the opportunity to become potential future leaders of their communities. So as I said before, partnerships are very important in the Learning on Country program. The key partnership, as you see here, is between, at each of those 5 sites, there's a partnership between the local ranger groups and the school. There's a memorandum of understanding that both parties have entered into, which sets out the responsibilities and various contributions of both organisations. But the partnership doesn't end there. There are other partnerships within the community between the school ranger group, and the key one there is the Yungu or Andaliakwa or Binning knowledge experts who make a great contribution with their assistance in the field and in the classroom in the learning process. Also, community groups that are seen down below are Norforce, fisheries are government agencies which sometimes are able to contribute their expertise and experience in classroom activities. The CDU and Bachelor Institute in the TAFE VET side of the schooling, and private enterprise, Gemco and Cotton On, have both made great contributions to some aspects of the Learning on Country. Program funding, where are we resourced from? This is a very important thing, because without resources we don't do anything. So we're very fortunate to being backed by 2 levels of government. Our funding originally comes from the Commonwealth Government via the Prime Minister and Cabinet Department. So we have a signed contract, a funding agreement which underpins our resourcing. And the money flows through the hands of the Northern Territory Government via the Department of Education. So the Northern Territory Government is the auspicing organisation, and from there the funds get distributed to the local schools, and they're used for running costs, basically, for the Learning on Country activities. So there are some very important key outcomes, and I'll only talk about one or two of these today. But attendances at schools, it's always been a difficult beast to grapple with because there are so many factors which go into determining whether a child attends school or not. But we've been attempting to do that anyway, and we've been gathering our data in relation to attendance of learning on country students. And one of the things that we can take from the graphs you see here, the blue and orange bars on the right-hand side of that bar graph, on the left graph, the blue bar represents the focus students. Now, they're a group of students that we've identified which are the more engaged ones, the ones who are perhaps doing a Certificate 1 or 2 in Conservation and Land Management. And we see there that the average attendance is hovering around 61% for those students, and you compare that with the orange bar next to it, and that's around about 40%. So a 20% increase in school attendance from the students who are our focus students. So from that we can perhaps conclude that students who are more fully engaged attend school more often. Well, that's pretty logical. But what the Learning on Country program does is it engages students. Their country is familiar to them, and that is the context of their learning experience. So another key outcome is improved education achievement, and so the vocational education training is very much a major part of Learning on Country. The VET units are delivered through the Learning on Country program. So Certificate 1 in Conservation and Land Management, we have recently, last year, Maningrida, Yirrkala Homeland School and on Groote Island, there have been 24 middle school Learning on Country graduates. If we go down to Certificate 2 in Conservation and Land Management, we can see at the Maningrida and the Yirrkala School, between them there have been 11 senior secondary Learning on Country graduates in 2016, and this is really quite significant. It sounds like small numbers at the moment, but it's definitely on an upward trajectory. So what that actually does for these students, it earns them 40 credit points towards their Year 12 certificate, and it puts them squarely on track to complete their Year 12. So here we have a picture of the Maningrida Certificate 2 graduates who attended a graduation ceremony in April this year, which was a terrific event. I was very lucky to be there and witness it, and terrific community turnout, proud families, proud students, and they're on their way. So another key outcome is to be able to develop clear pathways and job readiness and employment. So one example is at Maningrida, where over the course of their secondary years, they have Learning on Country activities, years 7 to 9 and 9 to 10. These students study Certificate 1 and then Certificate 2 in Conservation and Land Management in the senior years. And that leads to an internship and a ranger job at the end of it. And I'll just expand on that in a minute. At Yirrkala, we have work experience, Dimaroo Rangers work experience through the year, plus 4 Learning on Country students just completed their learning experience with Dimaroo over the last school holiday period. Groote Island, there's a work experience program in progress with the Anandili Aqua Rangers for 1 day a week for senior students. So this is the pathway to ranger employment that appears at Maningrida. So as I was saying before, it starts off in the bottom left-hand corner with general lock activities in the junior secondary years. It leads on to an elective choice that the students can make at Maningrida to take study VET units in Certificate 1 Conservation and Land Management, move on to Certificate 2 Conservation and Land Management at years 11 and 12. And if they complete that certificate, they have the opportunity to go into the GELC Ranger Internship Program, which is a 6-month program which they get contracted to the rangers. They work between 1 and 3 days a week, side by side with the rangers. They actually get paid for the work they do, and at the days they're not with the rangers, they're back at school studying for the Year 12. So they still need to complete their Year 12, and once they've successfully done that and proved themselves to be diligent workers and serious to the task of getting there, they're ready to step into a job. And in fact, the arrangement between the GELC Rangers and the Maningrida School is if they get to that point, they're guaranteed a ranger job, a full-time job. That's not the case in every location, because there's not necessarily enough jobs in ranger services around the country for everyone to slot into. So not only ranger jobs, this helps kids become job ready for other job types, such as the areas of tourism, arts centre, perhaps a job in the industrial estate with their experience on practical ranger work. Now, this concept is not only unique to Maningrida, but it is played out in all other locations where LOC is delivered, but with some local variations responding to local needs. So this illustration just shows some Maningrida students doing their certificate studies in the bush, animal trapping, and learning about trapping technology. This one, they're learning about operating basic machinery, brush cutters, spray units, etc. Also, they're learning about work health and safety issues. So by the time they finish, they're sort of have quite a lot of knowledge about workplace processes. So that's where I will finish up for the time being, and I believe there's a short video, is that correct, Jono? Looking at another approach taken in learning on country schools.
Learning on country. In Northeast Andaman, people learn 2 ways. So they learn education in school, and they learn education through the culture, through the ceremonies.
It's talking about the past, the present, and the future. We take the environment and put it in a curriculum and talk about.
It's real. It's on the country, and you feel the country. It's like the country is coming live with you, and you being there with the children, the Jamarkole, and explaining, because it's on the country and you get that energy from your own country.
These days, they don't follow the old people ways. They go their own ways.
Well, like many young people, is trying to get away from our culture, because there's a lot of things out there that attract them. Dimur is trying hard to bring people to pass the knowledge of wherever that the help can come, to help our people to get it right for themselves.
Okay, Katrina Hudson, Principal of the Yoccolla School, and Jalinda, Senior Cultural Advisor.
This is a workshop that we did. It's based on water couple, and it's a workshop that we did and one of the bays here on Daligoy. And you know, Firstly, we had to go and consult the right people for that country, custodians and jungers, to say it was all right to go and have that workshop or the kalta. This is one of my favorites. It's talking about the kapo and how you feel. The water coming in and tides going out. You, as a non-Indigenous person, you see water as for washing, cleaning, and everything else. But we, as Yolngu, we see water in a different way. We see water for cleansing. We see water for our feelings. And feeling is so important, because that brings everything in. And one of those words that was mayappa, we can't use that. We have toa and ayiricha, waters coming in. And there's words like tarlach, kolari, nekuna, mirline, and toa word, and richililim, murky, muddy water. We use that kind of words in our everyday, or not everyday, but teaching our children in a special way. This is the water coming in, the tide. The water coming in, rushing into the bay, and then when it comes to the bay, it comes to a calm water, and we call that the water is calm. It's either Iricha water or the Toa water. It's that the Mirla or the Iricha water that comes in, and this is one of the songs that we had the kalta on.
So the job of teachers in the school is really to work collaboratively with the rangers, but also the elders that have been consulted about where the Galta workshop will happen, and also plan ahead for how we capture the learning that the students are doing, so that that learning is accredited. So this particular unit of work, what's up there is like the mind map of our planning that we did way before the workshop started, and it's actually not just about the workshop, it was about a term and a half worth of work. And so we consulted with the rangers, and term 3, it's a really peak season for ranger work with marine debris. So if we have a look at the top, it's very difficult, I know, for you to read, but each of those branches links into a set of tasks. And the role of the teachers working with the students is really to say, well, how can we capture this learning through accredited curriculum? So for this unit of work, it was focused really with senior secondary students, year 10, 11 and 12. So the tasks there are really captured in NTCET courses, which give credit towards the students year 11 and 12. The subjects that were included there were Stage 1 and 2 workplace practices, Stage 1 essential mathematics, Stage 1 language and culture, Stage 1 integrated learning, and also 2 units from the Certificate 2 in conservation and land management, operate in remote areas and maintain natural areas. So collaboration and trust is a really big factor in the success of this program. And another really crucial element is that before we work on the tasks with the students and they're producing their work, we explicitly unpack the language requirements in English, and the Yolngu elders and Yolngu teachers do the same for the Yolngu mata. So I'd just like to maybe pinpoint a couple of those branches. So first, before we went to the Goltha workshop, we linked in with the ranger work about marine debris. Dimuru had conservation volunteers working at Cape Arnhem. First task related to workplace practices was to work with those volunteers and interview them about the value of unpaid work for the workplace practices. We then did our own marine debris collection on local beaches near Yirrkala, about the same distance as what the rangers were working on the beaches at Cape Arnhem, so then we can compare our data. So I'm just wondering if the next slide, oh, there it is. So the two tasks that came out of that work was related to, well, actually three, but essential mathematics, and it was a really great multi-level task because it involved basic counting and data collection. But for those students that had higher level mathematics, they're able to then analyse that data, make graphs, compare the data with the findings that the rangers were getting from Cape Arnhem. We brought all the rangers worked really closely with us. We brought all the rubbish back to the school, counted, collated everything, sorted it, and then we used that rubbish to make a collaborative artwork, which was then used in another task about raising environmental awareness and just to have that beautiful artwork on display at the school. And that was related to a Stage 1 integrated learning unit.
This is one of our elders that we invited to the workshop. She's just sitting there helping one of our students.
Yeah. So that's another crucial, a really crucial element of the program is that during the workshops, the students are always asked to report back. So they're getting more and more confident reporting back in English and Yongamata. And again, those presentations are linked into accredited courses. And so this is the tasks that came out of, or that were planned for the actual Goltha workshop at Daliwoi. And so I won't go through them all, but things like recording information under the guidance of elders and ethnographers, looking at site planning to prevent environmental damage in that area, mapping and the identification of plants and animals in those areas, again all linked into accredited learning. Do you want to talk about that one?
Yo, good evening everyone. My name is Kata Brahmanugur. I'm one of the senior ranger. As you can see that picture, that was one of the picture we took at Daliwoi Bay. And in front of, on my hand, there's a Nomad, we call it. It's a little software that record all the marine debris, and there's two programs there, one for inland and one for sea country. Like Katrina was talking about, when we collect all the data, this is a tool that we collect all the information for our workplace. Yeah, not only marine debris, there's also mapping areas and permit checks, people that goes to our recreation areas, and counting species, what in the marine life, yeah, all sorts of stuff.
So it's really showing the students learning from the rangers. It's real work.
Yeah, there's two both-ways learnings there. One Yolngu and Palandawe. Yeah, that's, yeah.
Do you want me to talk on you? So the next slide shows working with rangers and also people from Northforce here in the Indigenous Knowledge Centre at Gorkala. And again, that task was linked to the Stage 1 integrated learning and Stage 1 essential mathematics. and it's really both ways. The students had done their own mind maps, or not map, visual maps with the elders, and then that was compared with the topographic maps that the North Force soldiers brought over.
This is the elders, rangers and teachers coming together, sharing our feelings, our findings, and how we felt about the workshop. As you can see, they wrote and told each other our feelings and how they felt that day.
Yep. And that linked directly back to the gapo that Jalinda was talking about before, water as a metaphor for emotion. So a really huge part of learning on country is really well-being, and this was such a powerful moment of the workshop where there's men talking about their feelings, and that's role modelling that for the younger young adults that we're working with. Yeah, so that's just demonstrating that.
So just want to leave you with this video, recent video that we did. It's a Miriculture workshop that we did over at Yirrkala. Thank you.
Against the setting sun, Yolngu men and women dance in the East Arnhem Land community of Yirrkala. It's the sacred Miri string ceremony, which tells the story of the land, beings and clans of this area from tens of thousands of years ago. It's being performed as part of the school's Learning on Country program.
It is much easier for children to think into the Western world if they've got their own way of thinking first.
The program uses traditional ceremonies and Dreamtime stories to teach Western subjects. These students are analysing the poetic patterns in the Miri string story, a tale of an island hit by a tsunami.
We will be learning about things like tsunamis and geographical lands and why tsunamis happen.
Maths, biology and climate change are some of the other subjects taught.
It's the way that we live, it's our life. And we're trying to teach that to our children. That's our future generation.
The program covers all years. These early childhood students are collecting objects on the beach to make characters from the traditional song. It's also part of the Western arts curriculum. There's been no real change in Indigenous attendance rates in the last 2 years, and in the Territory they actually fell by 1.6%.
Our attendance have skyrocketed, in fact, in the last 5 years.
Making the kids stay in school because there's interesting things that's happening around.
But although this program does receive some government funding, organisers say it's also funded by philanthropic grants and the community. The federal government says the program will be funded after 2017 when the contract ends, but won't commit to an expansion or a national rollout. Avani Dias, ABC News, Yirrkala.
Just in closing that, again, I'd just like to reinforce the importance of the Learning on Country program. Katrina is actually my teacher and Gather's teacher over there. We both attended a bilingual education, and look where we are and the education that we do with the kids on the Learning on Country program. And that concludes the program. On behalf of Timoro, I'd like to thank the audience and the opportunity to present here today. Thanks.